A multi-day severe weather outbreak is about to ignite across a massive stretch of the United States, and the window for preparation is closing fast. We are talking about a pattern that stretches from the Great Plains all the way through the Great Lakes and into the Ohio Valley, a corridor that is about to see repeated daily rounds of dangerous thunderstorms, destructive wind, large hail, and a very real tornado threat on multiple days this week. At the same time, an expanding heat dome is tightening its grip on the central and southern United States, pushing temperatures to levels that are genuinely dangerous for anyone spending time outdoors. And lurking in the background is a flooding rainfall setup that computer models are beginning to flag as a serious concern for the middle of next week. This pattern is not a one-day event. This is a multi-day, multi-hazard setup that every person living from the Dakotas to Pennsylvania needs to be paying close attention to right now. And it starts today. Let's step back for a moment and look at the big picture before we drill into the day-by-day breakdown, because understanding why this is happening will help you appreciate just how significant this week could become. The driver behind all of this severe weather activity is a low-pressure system sitting well to the north in Canada. That system is about to send a powerful surge of northwesterly flow down across the Midwest, the Great Lakes, and eventually the Ohio Valley. When upper-level winds and low-level winds both intensify together like this, the atmosphere becomes incredibly favorable for severe thunderstorm and tornado development. You get wind shear building through the column. You get instability rising rapidly as moisture surges in from the south. And you get the kind of environment where, if storms can organize and tap into these ingredients, the results can be significant. This is the setup that is unfolding right now, and it does not go away in a day. This pattern is going to keep refreshing itself through the beginning of next week and possible why even into the middle of the week before a strong cold front finally scrubs the region clean. So let's get into exactly what is happening, starting with today. The Storm Prediction Center has issued a Level 2 risk, that is an enhanced risk, of severe weather for the Washington, D.C. and Philadelphia corridor. That is not a small thing. A Level 2 risk means meteorologists are confident that severe storms are likely in this region. And the main concern for this area will be damaging wind gusts. Along with that enhanced risk zone, there's a marginal threat of severe weather, a Level 1, extending from northern Virginia back into southern Connecticut. So if you live anywhere in the mid-Atlantic corridor today, you need to be monitoring the sky this afternoon and making sure you have a reliable way to receive weather alerts on your phone or radio. Meanwhile, out across the Midwest, a much larger Level 1 risk zone is in place today, stretching across the upper peninsula of Michigan through Wisconsin and back into Iowa and northern Missouri. The main threat in this zone will also be damaging straight-line wind gusts. But here's something important. I'm not dismissing the tornado risk in the Midwest today. The Storm Prediction Center may not have a formal tornado risk outlined at this time, but when you look at the significant tornado parameter values, they are going to tick upward this afternoon. Low-level winds are expected to increase around 5 to 6 o'clock this evening. There's enough wind shear available in this environment that if a storm can organize in the right place, an isolated tornado is absolutely possible. I'm watching the corridor from Des Moines northward toward Wausau, Wisconsin, particularly closely. Minneapolis is also in this zone. So if you live across any of these areas, do not sleep on this, have your alerts active, know your safe shelter location, and check back on conditions throughout the afternoon. There are also a couple of additional marginal risk areas worth mentioning today. One sits across the high plains, and another covers parts of South Dakota and Nebraska. For both of these zones, straight-line damaging wind gusts and large hail are the primary concerns. These are not the most dramatic threats on the board today, but you should still be aware that storms will develop in these areas during the afternoon hours. Now, let's talk timing for today, specifically, because there's already activity firing. Showers and thunderstorms have already begun developing across Minnesota and Iowa, and these are going to become more widespread as we move into the late morning and early afternoon. If you live along the East Coast, scattered showers and thunderstorms are expected to develop starting around 3 o'clock in the afternoon near Cleveland and Columbus, with coverage expanding through the late afternoon and into the early evening hours. The main concern in that area will be scattered damaging wind gusts reaching up to around 70 miles per hour. Pocket change-sized hail is possible. The tornado risk in this specific region is very low, but I will say this, it is August. And when you get to pop-up thunderstorms in this kind of environment, an isolated accidental tornado is always something you have to consider. Down across the southern plains, a large complex of thunderstorms has been weakening through the morning hours across Oklahoma and Kansas, but another round of storms is expected to develop this afternoon. The main concern with any severe storms in this zone will be damaging winds up to around 60 miles per hour. Hail is not particularly likely in this area today. And then in the desert southwest, monsoon season continues to pump moisture in across Arizona and New Mexico, and flooding concerns are going to be present over the next several hours in those regions as heavy rain continues to fall. Now, let's pivot to Saturday. Saturday is not expected to be a widespread severe weather day, and that is actually good news for a lot of people who need a brief window to recharge before what is shaping up to be a much more significant setup on Sunday. On Saturday, the primary area to watch will be across the interior northeast, mainly Pennsylvania and New York, where scattered showers and thunderstorms will be possible. The main threats in this zone will be some damaging wind gusts and isolated hail. The tornado risk will stay very low across this region broadly, but I do want to flag that an isolated tornado between 3 and 7 in the evening is on the table in central and eastern Pennsylvania. Those storms are expected to track toward Allentown and eventually toward New York City during the evening hours before weakening out overnight. So if you live in that corridor, keep an eye on the radar during the late afternoon and early evening hours. The rest of the region should be fairly quiet overnight into early Sunday morning. And that brings us to Sunday. And this is where things get serious. If I had to point to one day this week that carries the highest ceiling for a significant severe weather event, Sunday is that day. Here's why. By Sunday, the upper-level winds and the low-level winds across the Midwest are going to be ramping up rapidly. We are going to get very strong northwesterly flow aloft, and crucially, while the low-level winds at the surface are going to shift to come out of the south. That combination, northwest flow aloft, southerly flow at the surface, creates the kind of directional wind shear that is absolutely essential for supercell thunderstorm development and tornado formation. This is not a marginal setup. When you look at the significant tornado parameter values on Sunday, they are going to increase rapidly from Watertown, South Dakota, all the way into southern Wisconsin. That is a large corridor, and the instability in this environment is going to be extreme. We are looking at CAPE values. That is the measure of atmospheric instability, reaching upward of 4,000 joules per kilogram across Minnesota and Iowa on Sunday, with some locations potentially touching 5,000 joules per kilogram. To put that in context, that is an extraordinary amount of energy available to any storm that can tap into it. This environment is going to be very ripe for organized storm development, and if a supercell forms in this corridor and takes advantage of these ingredients, we could easily be looking at a significant tornado threat. Now, I want to be precise about what we know and what we do not know yet, because being honest with you matters more than generating alarm. Forecasting severe weather 3 days out, especially in July and August, the 2 hardest months for severe weather prediction, is genuinely difficult. Exact storm tracks and timing can shift significantly in the final 24 to 48 hours. What I can tell you with confidence is that the ingredients are there. The environment is going to be loaded. The question is whether storms can organize and tap into those ingredients at the right time and in the right place. Current model guidance, including the high-resolution models, is hinting at supercell development in northern Wisconsin during the early to mid-afternoon hours on Sunday, with storms potentially becoming more widespread during the late afternoon and early evening. By around 9 o'clock Sunday evening, models are depicting a line of thunderstorms organizing from Minneapolis back through Milwaukee. That line is expected to continue spreading eastward through the overnight hours, potentially impacting cities like Milwaukee, Grand Rapids, and even Detroit during the overnight hours into early Monday morning. This kind of organized line of thunderstorms, what we call a mesoscale convective system, can produce widespread damaging wind gusts over a very large area in a short period of time. So even if the more intense supercell activity stays focused in the early afternoon window, the overnight threat for wind damage is very real for portions of the Great Lakes. Then we move into Monday and Tuesday. The pattern essentially keeps going. The strong northwesterly flow that is driving all of this activity is not going to disappear after Sunday. It is going to persist through the early part of the week, and that means repeated rounds of severe thunderstorms are going to continue firing across the Ohio Valley and Midwest. On Monday, the primary focus is expected to shift toward Indiana, Ohio, and possibly Illinois. If you live in any of those states, Monday could be a significant severe weather day with a wind and tornado threat on the table. By Tuesday, model guidance is hinting at the threat potentially rekindling a little further west across Iowa, Wisconsin, and Illinois, and also extending back into West Virginia. The pattern is going to be relentless and repeated, and that is what makes it particularly dangerous. And while we are talking about Monday and Tuesday, I need to bring up the flooding concern because this is something that is genuinely troubling when you look at some of the model output. The GFS model, a deterministic model, is showing a widespread 3 to 7 inches of rain across the Ohio Valley by the middle of next week. In some locations, it is even hinting at 8 inches. Now, here is why that is especially concerning. When you see those kinds of numbers on a large-scale deterministic model, not a high-resolution model, not a convection-allowing model, but a large grid model, it usually means that there's a very real signal for major rainfall. The pixels are large, and the model is still showing extreme totals. The European model, while not as aggressive, is still showing a broad area of 1 to 3 inches of rain across the same general region. So we have agreement between two major modeling systems that significant rainfall is coming. The exact totals will need to be refined, but the concern is real, and the potential for flash flooding in the Ohio Valley during the middle portion of next week is something everyone in that region needs to be aware of. By Thursday and Friday, the pattern should begin to evolve. Conditions are expected to start drying out somewhat in the Ohio Valley region. But out across the northern plains, there's another signal worth watching. Long-range model guidance is hinting at a potentially strong low-pressure system developing in that region around a week from now. If that system materializes, it could bring a more organized threat of all hazards of severe weather, tornadoes, large hail, and damaging winds, to the northern plains. It is too far out to be specific, but it is something to keep an eye on over the coming days. Now, before we move on, let me make sure you have everything you need to stay informed during what is shaping up to be a very active stretch of weather. Make sure your weather alerts are turned on right now on your phone. Do not rely on seeing lightning or hearing thunder to know a storm is approaching. Dangerous weather can move fast, and having a notification that wakes you up in the middle of the night could make a critical difference. Know your safe shelter location before the storms arrive. Interior rooms on the lowest floor, away from windows. If you are in a mobile home or a vehicle and a tornado warning is issued for your area, do not stay there. Get to a sturdy structure immediately. Basements are your best friend during a tornado threat. If you live in a flood-prone area of the Ohio Valley or the Midwest, now is a good time to think about what you would do if flooding became a threat to your property over the next 5 to 7 days. We should also talk about what is not happening right now, and that is any significant tropical activity in the Atlantic. The Atlantic hurricane season has been remarkably quiet so far. El Niño continues to suppress development in the Atlantic basin while keeping the eastern and central Pacific very active. If you have been watching the tropics anxiously, you can breathe a little easier for now. There is essentially no activity worth tracking in the Atlantic at this point. The one caveat, and it is an important one, is that because the season has been so quiet and we have not seen many systems develop, the atmospheric environment in the Atlantic has not been working very hard. If and when a system does develop, there is a real concern that it could intensify significantly because the conditions that have been suppressing development could, in some scenarios, also allow a focused system to strengthen rapidly. So, while the quiet season is certainly good news, it does not mean you could completely tune out the tropics for the rest of the hurricane season. Keep an eye on it, and updates will come as needed. Now let's shift gears and talk about the heat, because while all of this severe weather is developing across the central and eastern parts of the country, there is a dangerous heat dome sitting over the south-central United States that is not getting nearly enough attention. Temperatures are reaching up to 115 degrees today across southern Kansas and northern Oklahoma. That is not a heat index, that is an actual air temperature, and it is brutal. The heat is not moving. In fact, it is going to intensify across the Central Plains on Saturday, with high temperatures surging well into the triple digits across South Dakota and Nebraska. And then, Sunday and Monday bring what may be the worst of it. If you live in central Kansas, conditions this weekend are going to be genuinely dangerous. High temperatures are expected to reach 112 degrees on Sunday. St. Louis is looking at 101 degrees. These are not temperatures that are uncomfortable. They are temperatures that are medically dangerous, particularly for the elderly, for young children, for people who work outdoors, and for anyone without access to reliable air conditioning. Heat stroke can develop quickly at these temperatures, and it can be fatal. Please check on your neighbors. Stay hydrated aggressively. Limit outdoor exposure during the peak afternoon hours. If you do not have air conditioning and you live in one of these regions, identify a cooling center near you before this weekend arrives. The heat is expected to persist at least through Tuesday or Wednesday, before a strong, cold front finally punches through the Midwest and Great Lakes and begins to bring temperatures down. And when that cold front comes through, the change is going to be dramatic. Temperatures are expected to plunge, with overnight lows dropping back into the 30s, 40s, and 50s across Minnesota and Wisconsin. There are actually some locations in northern Minnesota where overnight temperatures could flirt with the upper 30s, which is not freezing, but it is close enough that anyone with active crops in that region should be paying attention to the forecast carefully over the coming days. The contrast between the brutal heat sitting over the south central plains right now and the eventual cold air pushing down from Canada really underscores just how dynamic this weather pattern is. You have dangerous heat baking the southern tier. You have explosive severe weather firing repeatedly across the Midwest and Ohio Valley. You have a flooding rainfall threat building for the middle of the week, and a potential new storm system may be organizing in the northern plains by the end of next week. This is a full spectrum weather pattern, and it demands full spectrum attention. As we move through this week, staying connected to regular forecast updates is going to be essential. The details on the Sunday through Tuesday severe weather threat are still being refined. And as we get closer and models get a better handle on exact storm placement, timing, and intensity, those specifics will sharpen considerably. The big picture message right now is clear. This is going to be a highly active stretch of weather across a large portion of the United States. And the time to be prepared is before the storms arrive, not during. Stay weather aware. Stay alert. Keep your notifications on and your eyes on the sky during the afternoon and evening hours over the next several days. SE. Ever weather can move quickly and can intensify rapidly in an environment this loaded. And remember, when a warning is issued for your area, that is not the time to go outside and look for the storm. That is the time to move to shelter and stay there until the warning expires. Thank you so much for watching and staying informed through what is shaping up to be a genuinely significant week for weather across this country. If you are new here and you found this forecast helpful, now is a great time to subscribe. Hit that button and turn on notifications so you do not miss updates as this pattern evolves. There is a good chance we will be going live as this severe weather setup develops, particularly as we approach Sunday, and you will not want to miss that. The next update will be out as soon as conditions warrant, and if anything major shifts in the forecast, especially on that Sunday through Tuesday severe threat,